All right guys, this is day 2 of working on the N52 Swap 335i. Right now we're doing the wiring harness here. We've got Gus and Tomas dissecting that. We ran into some issues with the existing 335i harness. We're going to use the 6 HP transmission harness from the 335, but that's not going to work because a lot of the wiring is different. So we picked up the N52 wiring harness and we're going to install that now. We've got 3.5-inch exhaust made for this. I'll show you guys that, and stay tuned. Here we've got the turbo. What size turbo is this? We've got a 6262 turbo, this custom down pipe from our fabricator, and we've got the 3D printed prototype manifold holding it up here. So that's what the manifold's gonna look like. Still waiting on that. N52's all in and mounted. We just need to finish the wiring and build a charge pipe with a MAF and build the piping from the turbo to intercooler. Intercooler wise, we're just using a 335i VRSF intercooler. I believe it's a 7.5-inch. And we retained all of the front end from the 335 to make the space for that intercooler. So we've got N54 radiator, N54 AC condenser. We're using N52 accessories on the block. After we get these N52 harnesses, it should be fairly plug and play. So we're building a custom radiator hose to go around this custom intercooler piping to turbo that's being built. So it's just gonna wrap around the side there. We're gonna run NGK one-step colders, the spark plugs that we stock here for the supercharger and turbo kits. And we're gonna be running these Eldor coil packs that are for an N54 on here, which is also what I run on my supercharged N52, and they're good for pretty much whatever power you're gonna put on an N52. Oil cooler, we're running the stock N54 oil cooler. That'll be more than adequate for this, which just runs to the fender here, and it pulls air from this front duct. All right guys, here's the underside of the car. We've got a VRSF 3.5-inch 335 exhaust. This I'll obviously bolt up since it's a 335. And then for the front half, we fabricated a additional 3.5-inch V-band to the downpipe and another V-band into the exhaust manifold. Right now we're just running the transmission cooler lines and just buttoning up everything on the bottom side of the card. We still need to tighten the crank bolt since we did do a refreshing of the engine and gap the piston rings. Just using a stock crank hub on this one. And we've got the original 6 HP 21 transmission, which we'll probably run a custom tune on. The rear diff is probably a 3.46 ratio, which should be pretty good for the boosted application. Here's day 3 of the progress. We installed the harness we bought yesterday. I ended up de-looming. I removed this plastic piece here because it obviously doesn't sit in the magnesium cover, which we're using much nicer for turbo heat versus a plastic one. We do have the 22 RPD heat shields as well. Not sure where the top piece ended up, but we'll be running that to protect all these electronics from heat. Need to re-loom this to make it a bit nicer, maybe put some heat wrap over it. DME box wiring is totally done. We used all MSV80 harness 32808 plus wiring. DME box was all plug and play with the MSV80 ignition harness. We didn't have the upper fuel line, so Gus made us a quick connect hose, which eliminates the upper portion. This runs all the way back underneath the car to the fuel supply hose. Injectors are all in. These are the upgraded injectors from 22 RPD. These will flow plenty for our needs. And we're running the 22 RPD billet adapters for these as well. Kind of hard to see here in this lighting, but they adapt these smaller length injectors to fit plug and play on the N52. All right, so we've got the wiring harness and everything connected. We're doing a diagnostic here just to make sure there's no issues with the wiring. So far, so good. Also to note, we ended up using the 06 wiring harness container here, this black box. I pulled out all the wires and then put them back into this one. It fit almost perfect besides this overlapping wiring harness here on the 06 that goes around back. So I just trimmed a hole in here, which I might make nicer at some point to allow this to pass through. But by doing that, it allowed us to retain these grounds here and here and have OEM fitment. You guys are probably wondering why we're putting an N52 in a 335. Why not just build an N54? Well, we got this 335 for free with a bad motor, and we also got this N52 basically for free. So it's a perfect opportunity to do a refresh on the N52 engine. We did all stock internals. All we did was gap the piston rings for boost. Really good chance for us to build our turbo kit on an N52 in an E90 chassis, and also to get this on the dyno to finally show what an N52 can do with a proper turbo setup. All right guys, so this is where we're leaving off for this video. We've got the charge pipe mocked up. We've got the downpipe finished. Manifold is still getting completed. We've got charge pipe in. Still need to weld a MAF bung on there. Wiring harness is completely done. Verified with the scan tool that everything is communicating. So that was the biggest concern for us, was making sure that we could have this functioning completely OEM with no wiring gremlins. So using all of the 328i wiring harnesses and the N52 DME worked absolutely perfect. We still need to tighten the crank hub bolt, and we're gonna wait to start this engine until it's ready to go straight to the dyno, because we did do a rebuild on this and we want those rings to sit absolutely perfect for the boost. So all we have left right now, we need to install the transmission bell housing bolts. We need to torque all those down, and we need to order some power steering lines and get that connected. We also scored these KW V3s for free with the car, so we're going to install those. And we also got these drilled and slotted rotors, which should look pretty nice in the car as well. What's up guys, this is Raymond. I'm here today at 22 RPD. We've got Zach here, and we have a very interesting build to show you guys. So Zach, will you tell them about what we got going on here?
Yeah, we picked up a 335 with a blown motor, as most of them come. And we had this N52 laying around from some other project. We thought, hey, we'll finally make a reliable 335. So we decided to stick this in. Raymond here wired up the ECU, Raymond and Tomas. That was a lot of work.
Sure was.
The car came pretty cut up, I guess. But the cool thing about this is we're gonna have the 6 HP from the 335, 335 diff, axles, etc. I think that's a little better. You'd know best.
Do you want to say how you came to
Get the motor?
came across the motor? Yeah.
Yeah, so we had a customer who canceled a build that he was going to put this in another chassis. We support a lot of the E30 swap guys. It was one of those guys, and I forget exactly why, but he needed some other parts, so he offered us in trade this N52. And so we were like, nobody really knows the limit of the N52 bottom end. There's some theories. So we thought, hey, let's gap the rings. Let's see how far the pistons and rods can go. So we pulled it apart and gapped the rings, put it back together. I think we reused all the bolts. I don't even think we bought any new bolts. It was just meant to be like a dyno mule. That just never came to completion, and then we had this chassis, and we're like, let's just throw this thing together. So now we're gonna do, for all the guys, I know we've been tuning some other kits and some other cars, so we really wanted a chassis that we could put together and do our development on, be able to sell a proper package. So that's kind of what this is becoming, a proper package. We're gonna have a really nice 3D printed stainless exhaust manifold. We have a really nice exhaust. We're gonna have good charge pipes. We're gonna roll this into a kit that everybody's gonna be able to install. And we're gonna be able to support those turbo guys a lot better, having a test mule in-house. And we'll be able to see if it can make 600 or 700 horsepower. And the only reason we gapped the rings was because we wanted to understand the absolute power of the components.
Yeah.
The rings aren't a power limitation. The rings are always gonna butt at more heat, right? They're designed to tighten up with just operating heat. So when you add 2 or 3x power, they're always gonna butt. That's always gonna be your first limitation. That's gonna happen way before the strength limit of the pistons or the rods, assuming the tune's good. If the tune's bad, you'll break everything. But if you have a good tune, the first thing that will always happen is you'll butt rings. This happens in every platform. This happens in LS. This happens in just any boosted platform. So if you go and you gap the rings, open them up quite a lot, then you're actually finding the limitation of the components. And the contention is that the rods in these are super weak, or the pistons are weak, or whatever. I think these motors are great. We like the cylinder heads. They're gonna make a lot of power at a low pressure ratio. So I'm not really worried about the components. We already spin them to what, 7,500, 8,000 RPM with superchargers at 14 pounds of boost. So we already have all the data to prove that the motor's capable, and RPM is way more damaging to a motor than boost. So I think it's gonna be a really successful combination here. So we built this test mule to prove that. We were gonna put it in the dyno and just up the boost, different turbos, and see. We just kind of had this chassis here and it was too enticing. We put it in there and we're gonna see what it'll do.
So obviously we've already proven the results of adding a supercharger to an N52. You can make just upwards of 500 wheel horsepower on essentially a basic bolt-on kit and some meth. Superchargers run great on these cars. Why would we bother going turbo? What's the difference?
It's a good question. The biggest downside to a supercharger, well, it's an upside and downside. It's just mechanically driven by the motor. So you have inherent losses, right? You're having to pump that motor versus using the exhaust. This is day one stuff, right? Instead of using drive energy, we're gonna use exhaust energy to make the same boost. By decoupling the drive energy and using waste energy out the exhaust, obviously you gain more power for the motor. So boost for boost, like 14 pounds inlet pressure on both motors, generally you're gonna have more actual power. So on a supercharged car at 450, you're burning 500 or 550 horsepower of fuel, putting 550 horsepower of load on the motor for the wheels to make 450. The cool thing with a turbo is you're taking away that drive energy, so you can make more wheel horsepower at the same load on the motor.
What kind of person would want a supercharger and who would want a turbo?
These cars do so well with the supercharger, it's going to be a really fine line. I think turbos, like there's some really specific cases, like you live at altitude now, a turbo will do better inherently at altitude because it's not one-to-one with the motor and you're not moving that efficiency on the graph so much. Also, turbos are going to be a lot more fun from the noise perspective, from the theoretical future anti-lag perspective, they're fun, right? You're going to get more torque in mid-range out of a turbo. And boost for boost, you'll probably get a little more peak power out of a turbo. Speed for speed, a 14 PSI supercharger and a 14 PSI turbo are going to be about the same, all else things equal. So I mean, same motor, same RPM, same boost, they're going to be pretty comparable. The interesting thing is when you take and compare it to like a N54 with like a factory turbo. So they're like, oh, I make 500 horsepower, whatever numbers they claim, 450 horsepower and factory turbos. That's happening at 5,000 RPM because those turbos are totally out of gas up top. So like an N52 at 500 horsepower will absolutely destroy an N54 at 500 horsepower because you're spending time under pressure. So when you get to the right side of that graph, when you shift, right, you come back into 4,500 or 5,000. So that right side of the graph, you're looking at the power there. That's what makes the car fast. Average power output, not peak torque at 3,200 or whatever. What makes the car fast is that right side. So that's why the supercharger cars, your car is so fast versus all these other cars. Because you're spending all that time at your peak efficiency, that right-hand part of the graph. And the same thing's gonna happen with a reasonably sized turbo N52. The heads flow so well, and in the race situations, we're gonna keep it in that 5,000 plus RPM band, and they're gonna be really efficient, really fast, even though they're only making 400 torque.
So basically what you're saying is we want as much power as possible over the broadest RPM range versus, say, a higher peak horsepower that drops off.
Yeah, I mean, there's two ways to look at it. If you're on some sort of circuit track or something like that, you want the most broad power possible because you're using that whole RPM. You're downshifting, you're upshifting, etc. When you're looking at drag racing or straight line racing, your goal is to optimize the right side of that graph of 5K and above. And that's where like the small factory N54 turbos, even though they have great numbers theoretically, you'll always get beat by the N52 with the supercharger kit.
That makes sense.
Yeah. The funny thing is with an N54, they might make 400 horsepower and 500 torque or whatever, but that's all happening way far to the left. So once they're like in a roll race or a street race, they're way past their efficiency on that stuff. Unless they're going with a big single or they're going with some of these other things. But comparing a big single N54 to a big single N52, you're gonna have way more head flow. So you're gonna, at a way more efficient pressure ratio, you're gonna be able to make power here. So that's what's exciting about this sort of package. And it's why the supercharged cars work so good.
So this sounds like a ton of pros for the turbocharger kit. Who would want to get a supercharger kit on an N52?
Well, the supercharger kit is really simple. As of now, the turbo kit looks like we're going to be using an N54 intercooler, which necessitates then an N54 cooling package, radiator, and so on. So there's some complexity there that's not necessary, really, with the supercharger. And the supercharger cars, for most people, are really fast already. It really adds a lot to the baseline package for something that you can bolt on in a day. Whereas a turbo kit is going to take a little bit of fab and a few other things. Even if we give them the full kit with the downpipe, they still have to connect it to their main exhaust, swap in the intercooler, and do the radiator. It's more complex. It gives them more ceiling, theoretically. It's a higher risk product as a turbo because boost isn't coupled to the motor. So what's nice about a supercharger is it's a belt. You can't overboost. You can't have a wastegate line melt and have an issue. With risk comes reward with the turbo. You have a theoretically higher ceiling, a little more power from a little more complexity and a little more risk. That's pretty fun. You can have different boost modes with the turbo. That's pretty cool. You can have a high and a low. When we come out with the XRPD stuff here this year, we're gonna have map switching as we've shown. And with map switching, we could even have flex fuel or some variety of fuel switching. So with a turbo car, you could pull up to an E85 station, fill up, go to map 3, and with a turbo kit, run high boost. That's not something you can really do in a supercharger, right? You have to like get out and swap pulleys.
Right, exactly.
But it's hard to beat the simplicity of bolting a supercharger on, putting a new belt on it, and making 450 wheel horsepower. I mean, you've been successful for 30,000 miles or more probably.
Yeah, over a year now.
Yeah, at big boost. How many years ago were they talking about these motors wouldn't be able to handle 10 pounds?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I remember back in the day, people would say things like the magnesium block will crack if you hit 8 PSI, which is very clearly not the case.
No. Yeah, no, people they just assume things. It's a great little motor, man. It's a really, really good motor. I think we're gonna do really well with it. And it's been overlooked for no reason. So we like an underdog. I think this is probably one of the last like traditional BMWs. You got a nice cylinder head, you got port injection, you have traditional BMW inline six dynamics that you don't have any longer with an F30 B58 or an N54, an S58. Those are all great motors. We love them. But this is something traditional about BMW that's really special. And this is sort of the last, I think this might be the last car they ever do that's an NA inline six with port injection.
100%.
And I love that.
It's interesting what you say about the port injection because as most people are aware, if you want to make big power on an N54, it's time to add port injection, which means you need to add a reflex, or even in recent years, everyone's going to a standalone option like Max ECU and completely doing away with the DI system just because it's, I think, $3,500 now just to replace your Index 12s, and then you need your controller, and that stuff adds up really quickly. So one thing I really love about the N52 is we're already on port injection. The injectors we have in this engine, it's about $400, and you're already PI. The stock DME that we're just putting a flash tune on has great logic, and it's already controlling these injectors from the factory. So it's a very simple and natural way for this car to be functioning.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the car behind us here, this is an N54 with a big single, very similar to what's here. That's like a 6466, and this is a 6262. And this guy's gone through everything. New Index 12s, new high pressure, port injection, reflex, and you got the numbers right. I mean, it's a $5,000 entrance to get into making more than 500 horsepower or something in N54. So you go through and you do the port kit, the reflex, the new high pressure pump, the new injectors, just to get the misfires fixed and the tuning for all that. And then 2 years later, you have another issue. And then you start going, well, I think I want to do a Max ECU. And we do those all the time. And so we put a Max ECU in this customer's car to get rid of all the DI. So he's running no DI, no high pressure needs, and we're running just port injection. The car runs great now. But it's at this point, he's $10,000 in electronics and fueling, over the last 2 or 4 years or whatever, just to have a 600 horsepower car. And I think that's what's really special about this. The N52 already has most of that. It's already PI. It already has twin wideband or single wideband, depending on the application. And the ECU is super scalable. I mean, we're able to do whatever we need with this factory ECU to handle the power. So it's a really interesting sort of last platform. I see people using these in the future for track days and other race events because it's sort of a heritage thing that doesn't exist. Sure, we can go do S58 stuff, but it's just the next new thing, and this is sort of heritage. This is like where we come from. I mean, we come from M50 life. M50s, S50s, S52s. That's what we like. It's what we've liked for a long time. So this for us is sort of the last motor for that. We have a lot of internal discussion about do we want to be the N52 shop? I don't think that's a fair conversation. It's like we don't have to be the N52 shop, but we can appreciate this motor and make good parts for it and help the community and still do other stuff. We have a few options, for these. These are on the same low pressures as an N54 car. So you can get any off-the-shelf low pressure fuel pump. I think you have one in your car.
Yeah, Walbro 535.
Yeah, so we don't have to do any high pressure work. I mean, we've kind of covered that, but the only fueling mod you have to do in the chassis here is a low pressure. And we're working on some stuff now where we're going to do EKP deletes and simpler low pressure fuel control in the future to get rid of all that complexity and go to a single pump back there. It's going to be interesting. So we're making these cars simple and reliable, very reliable. A traditional port injection inline six.
So the N52 sounds like it's all upsides. It sounds like it's reliable. It sounds like we've got the PI solution. It's easy to upgrade fueling to support power. What is kind of like a N54 type issue that the N52 might see pop up now that we're pushing more power? What could we see?
I mean, the big issues still carry over. We still have the EKP. It's still the same EKP system as an N54, so they still overheat when you add additional fuel, and then you have to add the harness and the secondary pump like your car. We are working on a solution for that to run no EKP and some control, so keep your eyes out for that. I don't want to spill too much too soon. The other issue that's N52 specific as compared to N54 is going to be the Valvetronic. We do have some issues with that. The Vano solenoids, some issues with that. Those are just cleaning pretty much, but the Valvetronic's definitely its own issue. We do have tested solutions for deleting the Valvetronic and running this, again, even simpler, more like a traditional M50 style motor where just a throttle body and just Vanos. So we have that solution. That's something we're going to probably offer soon to just continue to simplify this platform, make it more reliable. But other than that, I mean, I can't think of anything else. Can you think of anything else? I mean, you're the guy.
Obviously I daily drive my N52. I've had my car for 5-6 years now, almost 2 years now, being boosted. And really I just changed the oil on it. I've done all the preventative maintenance. So there's nothing really that's been undisclosed to the public regarding N52s. We don't see too much weird issues pop up or reliability issues from what I've seen whatsoever. It's always the standard stuff. BMWs in general, you fix your oil leaks, you make sure it has good oil, stuff like that. So I feel like it's not an overly complex system, and we've really have it figured out at this point.
Yeah. And in the future, we're just going to keep hammering down on that. Just keep making them simpler, more reliable, keep finding solutions to make them more robust. And I think they have a long lifespan. And we love the price point. I love that the N54 exists and then we can keep these. But no, they have a good lifespan. I'm excited for them.
So in recent years, with the popularization of going to a standalone ECU versus a standard flash on the stock ECU, why are we still using the stock ECU and not going to max ECU or something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a discussion right now with the N54s doing it and so on. And any ECU choice comes down to a few constraints. Probably looking at like cost first and foremost, complexity to install, wiring, ECU sophistication, and features. So obviously a standalone is going to have a huge cost and a complexity. You're going to have to wire it in. You have to get all that right. The reliability therein of something that's produced by a human and not something that's produced for an OE is way different. But let's take all that aside and let's just look at the sophistication and the feature set of an ECU. That's really the deciding factors. So sophistication and feature set. Spent a lot of time reverse engineering and working with the stock ECU. And for us, we have full access. So for a lot of people that don't have that time to commit or are very experienced in a specific ECU, it's easier for them to just recommend putting in a standalone than having to do this huge cliff learning reverse engineering period with ECU. That learning curve is most shops can't take, but we do a lot of ECUs. We've been developing this over time, so we have a lot of access. So then the question becomes, again, sophistication and feature set. If you have access, if you have the capability to tune everything you want to tune on it, then it's just all else things equal, sophistication and access. And the OEM ECU is going to have the highest level of sophistication on the important systems. We're talking about compensations across oil temperatures. We're talking about, specifically for the Vanos. We're talking about NOx sensors. I mean, there's tens of thousands of hours of OE level development to make these NOx sensors work. And then you go to a standalone ECU, you do a single point calibration, and you pray that works. It just doesn't work that way. This will control timing per cylinder. That's hard to do on a standalone to do even half as good of a job as this. So the OEM ECU is going to definitely have more sophistication at controlling this motor. So then feature set becomes what everybody hangs on. The standalone has this feature, has that feature, has launch control, has anti-lag, has traction control, these sort of features. So what you're trading with the standalone is sophistication and reliability for features. So our sort of goal right now is just put the features that people want in the stock ECU. And you're going to see that this summer. We're releasing what we're calling XRPD, Extended RPD. And that's going to give us, or going to give you guys rather, a couple new features. And we're going to keep expanding on these features over time. And our goal is to match a lot of standalone feature sets. We're talking long-term flex fuel, or at least map switching. We're talking launch control, anti-lag type features. And we're going to build those into the stock ECU. And what we're getting, the whole package that you're going to get from 22 RPD here, is the highest level of sophistication, the highest level of reliability, and the features that you want at the lowest cost. You're not spending $5,000 for a custom ECU kit on this, but you're having better sophistication than that in a similar feature set.
So that's really great news for the N52 guys that have, say, a 328, 325 that already came with an N52. What if someone has like an E30 or E46 and they want to put an N52 in it?
Yeah, I mean, it's still going to be the lowest cost solution to get a factory harness and a factory ECU. And we already support full standalone applications for the ECU. What I mean by standalone is we don't need the EKP, we don't need certain body modules. So we're able to strip it down to working basically as if they were to wire in a standalone. So they're still getting that reliability, they're still getting that feature set in swap cars. And we've already tuned a bunch of swap cars, and we support them real time. We have some really awesome cars and shops that are out there running. You may have seen Rossum at the races. He was on television.
Yep.
Fantastic application for that motor. And we're doing some more stuff with him this year with the new trumpets. That's going to be really exciting. And as far as swaps go, the next big thing, the big thing right now is the transmission swaps, that 8 HP. And as you know, we're already doing the 8 HP swaps. We're doing that on factory electronics. We're not talking about any standalone controllers, no expensive wiring. And we're giving full access to 8 HP controls. And the 8 HP 45 bolts up to this. So I mean, the N52 guys are really getting the perfect package. Direct bolt-on 8 HP access, direct ECU control, maximum sophistication. I mean, it's such an awesome little marriage of a chassis opportunity.
Obviously, I completely agree with this. Like Zach said, my car, stock N52, 8 HP, no standalone on the transmission controller, factory ECU, factory TCU, 22 RPD custom tuning on both the transmission and the engine, just through completely stock hardware.
Yep, it's really awesome. You guys are super lucky. It's a great time to be an N52 guy.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed that video. We're going to be doing a full build series on this N52 Swap 335. I'm super excited for this. This is one of the coolest projects that I've worked on in recent years, and I think it's going to do all of the N52 guys a lot of justice in really showing how much we can get out of these stock N52s. And I'm just really excited to push this platform more and see what it's capable of. I've been in the N52 platform for almost a decade now, and it's crazy to me that in 2026 that we still have so many new developments. We're still pushing the platform, there's still exciting stuff going on. And it's really great that I've been able to work with 22 RPD on this stuff, and they're as passionate as I am about this platform, and puts in the time to develop this platform through countless hours of dyno tuning and development and reading OEM level material for the DMEs so that we can provide things like map switching, anti-lag, all this new stuff that we're working that's going to come out this summer. I'm just excited to be a part of it. And I appreciate all you guys that have followed along on this journey and that have watched our videos and bought tunes and stuff like that, because it's really allowed us to push this platform further. And you guys show interest in stuff, and you hit all of our inboxes. You let us know what you want and all these kind of features that you guys are excited about. So we're just excited as you are, and we're very happy to be able to work on things to provide this stuff for you guys. So stick around, a lot of exciting stuff coming, and looking forward to having you guys along on the journey. We're going to be posting a ton of stuff on our social media platforms on this car and all the developments that we're going to be publishing this summer. So make sure to follow 22 RPD at 22 RPD on Instagram. Follow me on YouTube at Raymond N52, and my Instagram at RAI N52. Can't wait to show you guys what we're working on.